8 to 10%, pretty big unit. Let's hit the highlights here of social psychology. Okay, first thing is attribution. That's how we explain things. And attribution theory has a big concept called, well, here it comes. All right. Attribution theory explains why things happened. If something happens to you, like somebody almost hits you in a car, if you look at the situation, you're looking at the things surrounding the person, but if you're attacking the person, you're attacking their disposition. So in other words, if you say, oh, you idiot, that's their disposition. You're saying they are an idiot, as opposed to saying, oh, they must be stressed. So people do this so much, it's called the fundamental attribution error because it is so widespread. And what that means is if somebody does something to you, you will blame them, their disposition, and you will ignore their situation. Actor-observer bias is connected to this. All people have a self-serving bias. So actor-observer bias is if something good happens, you will take credit for it. Something bad, you'll blame the other person. If you do well on a test, it's because you are so wonderful. If you do bad, it's because the teacher is so awful. Okay. All right, so that's attribution theory. Then attitudes and actions. Social psychologists want to explain the world. Actions are things we do, and attitudes are evaluations in our mind. So they're both important. But, well, one side note here. Persuasion is how we change someone's attitude. And there's two types of persuasion. One's called the peripheral route and one is called the central route. Okay, if you're trying to change someone's mind, the peripheral route might use an actor or a famous person and some way to kind of manipulate and get them to change. The central route of persuasion, you would give more fact and evidence. Okay, back to attitudes here. Okay, attitudes are what we think about. That would be persuasion we just covered. More important to psychologists is actions. And what psychologists argue is that basically, oh, there's attitude. Attitude is an evaluation, actions are behavior. Okay. All right, actions. Psychologists say that what we do is very powerful. Foot in the door is if you get someone to do a small thing first, they'll do a bigger thing later. Car salesmen are really good at this. They get you to drive the car and then you'll buy the car. Okay. Role play is also about action. This is the famous Stanford prison experiment. People acted like guards and acted like prisoners. They played the role, but the role play actually changed them to the point where he actually had to stop the experiment because the guards were becoming so mean from role play. Okay, cognitive dissonance, huge concept, will be on the test. If there's a clash between what you do, your actions, and your thoughts, people will change their thoughts before they will change their actions. It's easier to lie to yourself than to change. If you're a cigarette smoker, it's easier to tell yourself smoking is good than to stop smoking. That's cognitive dissonance. Really important one there. And we lie to ourselves sometimes. Okay. All right. Now, big one, conformity and compliance. Conformity is we choose to do something. Compliance, we must do it, we must obey. The big norms are behaviors in our society. They're not laws. We choose to not wear our pajamas to school. You could if you want to, but you choose. Okay, conformity, the big experiment is Ash. Know this one well. Read about it. Know it really, really well. He did an experiment with these lines. And basically, it was a very easy task here. Which of these lines are the closest to these lines A, B, or C? What happened was they had Confederates, actors in here, working with the researcher, and people would start saying the wrong answer. And what they discovered was people actually changed their answer to fit in, okay? And so conformity, that was Ash basically proved scientifically, empirically how powerful peer pressure is. People just want to fit in. Normative social influence is you will adjust and fit in just to be normal, just to be with the others. Informational social influence, it's harder for me to explain it, but basically this is stuff like an influencer on the internet. You might want to follow them because they seem like they're more accurate. But usually the answer is normative social influence is guys don't wear dresses to school because they want to be normative social influence. You could if you want to, by the way. You just would not be conforming. Okay, the harder the task, the higher the conformity. I mean, think about it. If it's an easy task, you might say, hey, that's not true. But if something's difficult, you really don't know the answer, you'll probably conform more. Okay, Milgram, most important guy maybe of the year, his experiment. Milgram worked with compliance. That's where you're forced to do something like the law. And when you follow the orders, that's called obedience. Compliance, you must do it. Obedience, you do follow it. Okay, Milgram did a famous study on this after World War II. He wanted to know why the Nazis could kill people and be so awful. So he came up with this really creative experiment where he told people they were going to be giving a test. This is all fake, by the way. And that when the person got the wrong answer, give them an electric shock. But what they didn't know was, and no one was really being shocked, the shocks started small, like 10, 15, 20. They went all the way up to 315 to like danger, really, really high shocks. Milgram was wondering how high would people go. The long story is, and the short story is, basically about 2/3 of all people shocked people to the max, but they didn't want to do it. They felt bad about it, but because the experimenter said, the experiment must go on, the person continued to shock, showing that an authority figure could compel people to do very cruel acts. Really know this one well, read about it, know it really, really well. A lot of ethical problems with Milgram. He hurt people emotionally, so he had to debrief them afterwards, and that's Milgram's experiment. Really fast here, group influences. I'm going to another third chapter here. How do groups of people change us? These are the ones you really want to be aware of here. Social loafing is when people are lazy in the group. Kids in group work. One of them will be lazy, one will be hard. If it makes you lazier, that's called social loafing. He's going to go harder here by himself than this guy over here is being lazy. Social loafing. Deindividuation is stuff in a mob. Basically, deindividuate, you lose yourself. Mob behavior becomes dangerous and violent. People do things they would not do by themselves because the group makes them deindividuation. Fácil in Espanol means fácil, easy. Social facilitation is when the group makes you do it better. If you're an expert, if you're good at something, the crowd will make you perform better. A great musician will do better with the crowd. He'll give a better speech with the crowd. He'll play better basketball or guitar with the crowd. If you're good at something, social facilitation will make it better. If you're not good, if you're a beginner, you'll do worse. But social facilitation makes you do it better. Fácil. Okay. We're going to skip this one for now. All right, group polarization is a big one, and this is when extreme groups hang out together and become even more extreme. Group polarization. So if you're a prejudiced person, you hang out with other prejudiced people, you're going to become more prejudice. That's group polarization. I know that sounds obvious, but it's on the test every year. America is very polarized right now because we can pick the news we want and we just become more and more polarized. All right, groupthink is another big one. Know this one really, really well. This is when smart people do dumb things. And there's a famous one of Kennedy, good guy, but boy did he blow it in Cuba. And really smart people made this bad decision. So groupthink pursued that, and what they discovered really quickly was that basically everybody wanted to get along. Nobody wanted to challenge or be difficult. So there was no dissent. Nobody said, hey, maybe that's not true. This is all about Bay of Pigs. It didn't work. It was a bad idea. And no one said, hey, that's kind of a bad idea. Then conformity kicked in. When 10 people say good idea, the 11th one said, well, I guess it's a good idea. There's a little bit of overconfidence there. And then group polarization. These people were all very similar to begin with. So they kind of just continued on that pattern. Groupthink, bad decision from smart people, Bay of Pigs. Right, and okay, then another thing here, the bystander effect is based on a true story. This woman was murdered in New York City and no one helped her. Afterwards, they went to the bystander effect, and that is the thing where if more people are around, people won't help. They're less likely to help. That's the bystander effect based on the concept of diffusion of responsibility. They all thought someone else would help. That's a big one to know for sure. Attraction, similarities attract, and proximity. If you're similar to someone, they agree with you, you'll like them. Hey, you're just like me, I like you. Proximity, if you go to the same school as someone, you also might be attracted to them. Mere exposure effect, this is on the test a lot. We like what we're used to, what we're familiar with. So you're going to be attracted to people that are similar to you. And by the same token, mere exposure effect, if you're around someone alike, you work with them, they might start to grow on you. You might start to like them more. All right, so if they ask, similarities attract. Prejudice, there's a lot on this, but the main one to be aware of is its stereotype is like a schema for a group. Attitude is a stored value. Prejudice is a negative evaluation, okay? The main one to be aware of is in-group, out-group. We have an in-group bias. We like our group more. We dislike the other group. That's in-group, out-group bias. And basically, scapegoat is when we blame another group. That's a very famous prejudice theory. I think we're going to do the rest. Real quick here. Just going to kind of go fast here. Altruism. Okay, people can be rotten. They can also be good. Altruism is when people help other people. They risk their life sometimes for strangers. That's called altruism. On aggression, just be aware, humans, aggression is when you want to hurt someone. Frustration, this might be obvious, increases aggression. When it's hot, when you're irritated, when you're frustrated, you'll be more aggressive. Testosterone is a male hormone that also is associated with aggression. They wonder, do video games and movies create violence? No one knows the answer. But there's something called a catharsis theory, and catharsis means release. And this is just a theory that when you release aggression with TV, media, maybe you'll actually have less aggression. There's Forrest Gump, our buddy, doing altruism, helping Bubba, and not being a racist. All right, self-fulfilling prophecy. Last one here is, I don't know why it's in this chapter, but when you have a belief and an attitude, it makes you act in such a way that it comes true. And I think we did aggression. Okay. That was fast, but there we go. It's an important thing, social psychology.